Hello, 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 and welcome or welcome back to the Big Sew Along. I'm Jenny, and as always, I thank you very much for choosing to spend some time with me. Today, I have a quick little review of the Style Arc Sydney dress. I'm not going to go into great detail because I know a lot of you have already made this dress, and I believe there are other, several other reviews around the web. Anyways, I do have a couple of specific things I want to talk about with that. Before we get to that, however, I wanted to follow up with you guys from last week. I had asked you for my black and white gingham fabric with the pink flowers if I should make this Catherine Tilton 6995 Butterick pattern or this Merchant & Mills Scout pattern, and the Scout pattern was the overwhelming winner in that, so that is what I will be doing. I also asked you between this Simplicity 3012 and the Closet Core Mile End sweatshirt. The Mile End one, that one also by a landslide. However, I think I'm probably going to make both of these at the end of the day. Okay, so I know you guys don't need to hear too much about this Sydney dress because a lot of people have already made it. I have the same thing to say about this pattern that I have to say about all of Style Arc patterns. Not overly intricate instructions, and they run big. This pattern is no exception. I did not make this for myself. I made it for my client. And let me just say before I get into this, this is a woman I have sewn for before, but I haven't sewn anything for her since before COVID, so it's been 4 years. She was also a client of a friend of mine, so my friend and I both sewed for her at different times. She contacted my friend and said she wanted this dress made, and my friend said, no problem, I will totally do it. They picked out some fabric and they arranged to have it made, and then my friend had an emergency come up and she was unable to do it, so she called me and asked me if I would do it. All that is to say that this fabric was picked before I got involved. So I just don't want anybody thinking that I went into this with the crazy notion that this was an easy project. I told my friend, of course, I would do it, no problem. I didn't ask any questions, which was not bright of me, let's just say that. So I didn't know what the fabric was. And let me show you why that matters so much. Because this is the fabric. Now, it's beautiful. This is a 100% linen. The problem here is that this is a stripe fabric. And not only is it a stripe fabric, it's an uneven, also known as irregular, also known as asymmetric stripe, which poses its own set of issues in the first place. In the second place, this particular dress has 6 skirt panels. It's got a front and a back. The front does have a center seam just in the bodice, and then it has sleeves that have 2 panels, so a front and a back for the sleeves. In addition to that, it also has a band that goes around the cuff of each arm and a band that goes around the hem. That is a lot of stitching to do in a stripe. It's a lot of matching to do in a stripe. And in this case, matching was not actually going to be an option, so I really just had to go with what I could do. So I'm going to show you some pictures of Shelly here in this dress. We originally cut a size 24, and I believe I added, Shelly is 5'7", so is that right, 5'7"? Yeah, I think she's 5'7". And she wanted it to be longer, so I think I originally added 5 inches, and then we decided it was too long, so I removed 2 inches. So at the end of the day, I think I lengthened it 3 inches. I made the size 24, which was the correct size given her measurements, but I did end up taking it in along the sides and of course on every seam around the skirt to reduce the circumference by a total of 8 inches, which is a fair amount. So at the end of the day, she loves it and I love it, and I think it turned out great. However, if you're thinking about doing this pattern, let me just say right up front, don't use a stripe or a plaid. Or just stick with a solid color fabric is the way to go with this. I do, however, have a couple of tips for you on how to work with an uneven stripe versus an even stripe. And I will also explain here in this clip what I mean between even and uneven stripes. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between a symmetrical or even stripe and an asymmetrical or uneven stripe. This piece right here is a even, or also known as a symmetrical stripe. And you can tell because if I fold this over on itself, and get this over here, if I fold this over on itself, you can see right here on this cut line, I can match up my lines, and all of the stripes are going to match up evenly. So in this case, you can see this jagged edge here. You can see my blue lines match up with blue lines, gray matches up with gray, blue, gray. I mean, if you do it right, they will all match up evenly, right? So I have this side cut out right there. If I flip it over like you normally would and lay it down and match up my stripes right along here, and match every one of them, and cut that out. Now our pants will be mirror images, right? So let me show you really quickly what that looks like when it's sewn together. So if this is the back of our pants, and this is the back crotch seam, this that I just sewed is the back crotch seam, this is what it's going to look like with an even stripe. Now you may not like my placement here too much, and that's okay. What's important is this. Do you see how these lines come together? Gray, white, blue, white, gray. That is what I'm talking about. Okay, so from the center you get the same thing on both sides. Blue, gray, moving outwards, right? That is an even or symmetrical stripe. This fabric, the one I used for my Sydney dress, is an asymmetrical stripe or an uneven stripe. And you can tell really easily by folding it like we did before, but you can see that these two stripes here go in one direction. All the way across the fabric, it's orange, red, orange, red. So if you flip it over and match your stripes, like so, it doesn't matter what you do, these orange and red stripes are going to be opposite each other. So you're matched up perfectly here, that's fine. Red is with orange, orange is with red. That is an uneven stripe. And this is what it looks like if you cut this the exact same way we did the last little sample thing. We're going to cut this the same way. Okay, that's my first side cut out. Now you can see if I flip it over and lay it down, I can match up my stripes like this. You can see that my orange, white, orange match up. Here, I'm going to have an orange with a red and a red with an orange, and the same thing over here. A red with an orange and an orange with a red. So I'm going to cut this out like this and show you how that looks. So now I've sewn my two pieces together, and this is what that seam looks like. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this. But there is a way to make it more symmetrical, which means you can see it's not just these seams. Looking at this side and this side, the pattern goes the same direction on both. So in order to make it more symmetrical, or make it symmetrical, it's a really easy fix. If you're using a fabric that doesn't have any nap at all, and you're using a pattern that has a center seam, you can do this. I've gone ahead and cut out my pattern piece one more time. Instead of flipping it over like this and matching my stripes up like this, I'm going to flip it over and then turn it upside down. And now, I hope you can see that. Now you can see my reds match my reds, my oranges match my oranges, and everything else matches exactly. And this is how that looks. See how reds match up, oranges match up, everything matches up. My sewing and cutting, not that great on this little sample, but you guys get the picture. So this is when you match the stripes symmetrically, and this is when you leave them as they are. Like I said, this isn't necessarily bad, but you do want to consider it when you're buying your stripe fabrics, whether or not that's going to be what you want. All right, guys, I hope you found that helpful. If nothing else, I think it's worth pointing out that if you're thinking about using a stripe or a check or a plaid for any project, you really want to check and see if it's an even or uneven pattern before you even make the purchase, because it's really going to make a difference in the way you cut your garment out, okay? Another thing I forgot to talk about at the beginning of the video is I did end up ordering that plaid, that green plaid fabric from Mood Fabrics, thanks to a couple of you encouraging me to just go ahead and do it. And also, I think 2 or 3 of you alerted me to the fact that the Mood website and the Mood store are not the same place. So if you went to the store, you wouldn't necessarily find what's on the website and vice versa, which of course totally makes sense, but I hadn't thought of that. So thank you all for alerting me to that, and just anybody who didn't already know that, good to have. That's good information to have. So I think this week I'm going to start on my first Anne ring strand project, and I think I am going to start with the key trousers in the gray 12 fabric I showed you all last week. And hopefully I'll have something of that to show you next week. Until then, I wish you all happy sewing.